Hello.
Hello.
Hey, we're all together. Hello. Dana, Dylan, Dana.
Hi, Dana. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Good morning from LA. Good evening from London. How are we doing?
Really good, thank you. Yeah, it's all
Good.
right. Actually. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm just going to do a couple bits of housekeeping. Hello to everyone watching us. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our supporters and volunteers. We are here to come together and feel united and comforted, and from my perspective, celebrating our little spark of genius that I believe we all have, and celebrating the fact that we're here today, guys. We made it another day, which shouldn't be belittled. Straight off the bat, I wanted to let you guys know, as I'm sure if you've been in other sessions, you would have heard this, but we are taking a poll. I'm going to lie if I tell you, oh, it's come up at the bottom. Okay, it's come up at the bottom. I was going to be like, I don't know where the poll is, but the poll is, what's easier to say to people? Saying that you're LGBTQ+, saying that you have bipolar. It's easy to say both. It's difficult to say both. Not sure. We'll go back to that at the end of this session. Now, they've actually taken one of the questions I had. I'm not lazy. I feel like I had it before anyone else, but we'll move on. But before we do that, I just wanted to introduce us to our wonderful panel, including myself. Hi, I'm April Kelley. I'm an actor and producer. I'm one of the ambassadors for Bipolar UK. I'm living with bipolar type 2 and borderline personality disorder. It's 2-for-1 deal. It's great. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm bisexual. Dana?
I'm a gay bipolar Jew with a lazy eye. And I don't think there's anything else to really know.
What do you do?
Oh, I'm a stand-up and a writer. I wrote a book called How to Be Depressed, a guide.
Oh, have we lost her?
Oh,
I don't know if that was part of the comedy, but I'm sure we'll get her back. Over to you, Dylan. Oh no, she's back.
I'm back.
Oh God.
I don't know what you heard until
that you wrote a book and then it went.
How to Be Depressed.
I wrote a book called How to Be Depressed, a guide, because I have bipolar 2 also. And the book is available in 4 languages. And what else? I just wrote on the Oscar Awards. No, I didn't write that joke. And that's all.
Thank you, Dylan. Apart from being the least funny person on this panel.
You know what? The most frustrating thing about that is that I was about to make that joke, and I was about to say, I'm the least funny person on this panel. You took that from me as well. But my name is Dylan Holloway. I happen to be the least funny person on the panel. I am a musician. I'm a singer-songwriter, producer, and April Kelley happens to be one of my best friends, and I know she lives with bipolar. And it's something that I can't say I've experienced, and I will never say I know what it feels like, but I'm here every day with my best friend to sort of sit through those emotions with.
That's really sweet.
My pronouns are he and him, in case I need to put that somewhere.
I nearly got emotional there, Dylan, so I'm not, that's it. You're not allowed to talk anymore. So let's kick off with the poll. I think that's the easiest thing to do. Obviously, Dylan, you can't quite necessarily answer this, but I think we can tailor it to you. But if we start with Dana, what do you find is the most easy to come out as?
I mean, it depends, I guess, who I'm speaking with. I think professionally, professionally, everybody knows because I talk about them on stage. But I was saying that sometimes, like with bipolar, because I had a joke for it, and with both cases, both bipolar and being gay, I had jokes before I was ready to talk about it. And so the jokes won because in stand-up, everything is about building time. How much time do you have? And with both cases, I would tell the jokes and blush at the same time. But I found that with the bipolar, there was the added pressure that now that everybody knew, I didn't have any room to be moody or upset or anything. That I was just very self-conscious of, are people going to think I'm unreliable if they book me? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers the question. But
yeah. So I mean, if you don't mind me asking, when did you come out and discover your sexuality, and when did you get diagnosed?
Well, I wouldn't say they happened at the same time. There were certainly mood issues when I was growing up, and then when I went to a therapist and was doing the actual coming out, she said, you said that's not really an issue, but I have the feeling it's more of an issue than you realize. And then it just took a while to get the actual diagnosis. So it was like late 20s, early 30s. And I forgot the question.
What was easier, coming out as gay or bipolar?
Wow, I went way off track.
That's all right.
So I think I don't know if one wins out. I guess the nice thing about being gay is like it comes with all these unexpected, wonderful things, like like realizing who your people are, and being bipolar. I mean, there's some certainly relief in like knowing a little bit more of the landscape, but not a lot.
Yeah.
But in terms of telling others, I don't know.
Well, I always found it easier coming out as bisexual than bipolar, because I feel like bisexuality, contrary to popular belief, is easier to understand than
Yes.
bipolar. But stigma, we'll come on to that. Dylan, if we're going to frame it a little bit differently for you, is it easier to speak about being trans or speak about mental health issues?
Well, I had actually thought about this question before we came on, because I knew the poll and what it would be. And although I can't speak from experience, I was thinking about how I would answer it. And my thought on it would be that of the two, because of the time in society in which we live and what people know of both, my opinion would be that it would be easier to come out as anywhere on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, more because when you tell someone, I am bi, I am trans, I am queer, I am a lesbian, I'm gay, I feel like people know how to take that information, and they're aware of what that means, whether they accept it or not, or whether they understand it really or not, they know what it means. And I think still with mental illnesses, even though they seem to be sort of banded around in sitcoms and in programs, I still don't feel like the general public know what it really means to be bipolar or to have schizophrenia or to really know what those things are. So it's sort of this unknown territory. And therefore I feel like if I had a mental illness and was trans, I think it would be easier for me to tell people I was trans, because they would know what that means immediately without me having to explain it all too much more. And like you said, then I imagine people wouldn't not book you based on unreliability because you're bisexual or something, because the likelihood you'll turn up if you're bi, whereas they might assume that if you're having a bad mental health day you won't show up to a show. So I imagine it comes with stigma, which I know you said we might move on to, but that was my opinion on it.
Yeah, I hear you, because also given the era we live in, so much more so now, if you come out in the queer community, it is celebrated. You're like, you're finally yourself, this is amazing. If you come out as bi, you're like, right, which version are we dealing with today? Like, it's harder to grasp, very much so. I mean, Dylan,
can I have my answer?
Of course, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think gay, because I think I don't really I don't really share bipolar even still, mostly just because it's like I don't want the explanations. But gay doesn't require an explanation. Everybody is pretty much familiar, and April and I discussed this. It also, like, I've always lived on the coasts of the US, where there are more gay people and there are more gay parts of the city, but like there's no bipolar parts of the city.
We were saying, what were we saying about if there was a city full of bipolar people?
Oh, it'd be open 24 hours. Be awesome.
It would be carnage. I would love it. I would love it. So I mean, I think Dylan is one of the most stable humans I've ever come across. And I don't know if that's just, if you put me and him together, it would just be obvious. But I feel, because we'll come on to this, but actually I've just seen that the main room overran. So we've got a few people joining us now. So hello, everyone. You're going to dive straight into this. My name's April. I'm the ambassador for Bipolar UK. We've got Dana here, who's a stand-up comic from LA, and we've got Dylan, who's a singer-songwriter, producer, one of my best friends. Does not live with the mental illness, but very much looks after someone that does. We will come on a bit more about the work we're doing together, Dylan. But has your mental health been affected by this transition?
Well, if we were to describe transition as like the time that I've been transitioning, then I would say my mental health has only improved because I feel like I'm aligning more with the person that I believe I was born to be. So that's like an absolute positive. But if we're defining transition as the overall 28 years of me being alive, I would say that my mental health has completely fluctuated through different landmarks in my life, like going to school, and then hanging out with peer groups that were male and female and trying to align myself where that was, and then going to like a secondary school where there's puberty and then everyone's getting boyfriends and girlfriends. And that was a really dark time in my life. And I know puberty sort of sucks for most people, but when you are completely anti your body changing because you know that it's going to lead you down a path that's going to be tragic, but that's how you feel, it's really dark and lonely and scary. And throughout my teenage years, it was fluctuating, and it's only since being in my mid-20s when I finally sort of owned who I am and said, this is me and I don't care what anyone else thinks anymore, my mental health seems to have, like, I guess, stabilized in that way. And now I feel like I can fortify the strength that's there when I can.
I always feel that you've got some surefire tools in your kit that you nip it in the bud if you're feeling wobbly. I feel like you're very self-aware and conscious, and because, you know, we always say on WhatsApp, you're always like, I just had a couple of hours and I'm fine now, and you're just aware of it, whereas I feel like I spiral all the time. But we were then saying, Dana, because if you don't mind speaking a little bit about what happened to you a few years ago and how since then you've been able to differentiate between a bipolar reaction and a general human reaction.
Yeah, I think that was one thing, like, that bipolar ends up shaping is not trusting your feelings, and so sometimes not having an ability to be able to go, oh, that situation isn't right because I just started to assume that I was the issue. But I had to go off of bipolar medication because I had cancer a few years ago, but really, I don't even know if it has to, it was just the medicine wasn't working anymore. And there were just a lot of stomach issues. And so, but I realized how much being older helped me out because it was no longer what it used to be. It was the feelings, and then it was panic on top of the feelings. And now I don't have the panic on top of the feelings. It's like, oh, I've been here before. I know what this is. It doesn't feel good, I will say that, but I have more of an automatic thing in my head of just what do I need what can I cancel out of, what do I need to cancel out of. And I think like the best thing, my shrinky dink ever said to me was just more, what is it that you think you need right now, and learning to say those things to myself. But certainly being able to just sort of sit back almost like I'm watching it instead of joining into the panic party is helpful.
I'm hoping to get there any day now. Hopefully. I had one moment, and in fact I was on the phone to you, Dylan, where I've come over to the States for a few months, and I had to split off we had to split off a relationship, not me and Dylan, someone else, me and this other girl. And I called him, and I was very sad, but because of how that person treated me with respect, with them educating themselves, with the language they used around me, I was like, Dylan, I'm just normal sad. I'm just sad like a person. I'm not bipolar sad. And it was such a revelation. I thought this is great. And then that means there are people out there that will learn and educate and find a way to love me without, yada, yada, yada. So Dylan, what have you learned? Like, if you could speak to everyone on here and say a couple of things that you've learned how to help me, or what you've noticed the most.
What I've noticed the most about April Kelley. Oh, I'm trying to whittle it down.
Keep it PG. Keep it
PG. I mean, to be fair, I think something that I have noticed with April, and because April is one of only two friends that I have who have a mental illness, so I can't speak for everyone in their friendships. But something that I've noticed with April is often it appears to me as though the bipolar takes over in situations and elevates things far beyond where even April knows they should be. And that's something that's going to happen because of the bipolar. But if I can help remind April of where the current situation stands, it's almost like I'm trying to be like a tether for April's kite, or I'm trying to be a tether for April digging a hole in any direction. If I can sort of stand somewhere solid and say, well, I'll be here and you can fly there, but remember where we are, or you can dig there, but remember where we've been, and sort of stay in that place, then April sort of always seems to come back to me there and meet me at that same place, and never to belittle or to diminish the feelings that she's going through, instead to validate them, but then remind her where we exist most of the time. I don't know, it's sort of like one technique that I've sort of tried to maintain in our friendship.
That was poetic. Can you tell he's a songwriter, everybody? Well, come on. He knows my brain more than most, to be honest, between him and my business partner, Sarah. So if anyone comes and watch my live streams, you'll know I pretty much only talk about her. They tend to know, especially Sarah, because we are constantly talking, but they know that I'm not doing well before I even know. Especially Sarah's got some time.
It's a change in behavior, isn't it? Or like a lack, because like you every friendship, regardless of mental health or mental illness, every friendship has a sort of like consistent flow to it. Some friends you sort of talk to every other week, and that's your consistent flow. And then with April and I, we set our pace at the beginning, and then we sort of increased it because we became better friends. And then you sort of get to know the momentum of a friendship. So then if that sort of like starts to fall off, you become quite aware of it quite quickly. And if it starts to speed up, you also become quite aware of it quite quickly. And it's just, I just think one of my biggest ways is never to over emphasize either direction in which it's going, but just try to stay in the lane to be where you are. I don't know.
No, I'm very, very fortunate with the support network I've got. Dana, what about you? I know we spoke potentially about needing to be fed occasionally, but your friends and the queer community, how have they supported you?
You know, I feel like I can call people anytime I want, but I don't know if it's, I'll just say this, like, I don't tend to call friends because I think my experience has been like the self-consciousness of it, like, makes it worse. So it's almost like it just keeps me calmer to kind of be alone and deal with it alone. And then of course I have the therapist, which is very helpful. One thing that's helped me a lot was it's a terrible thing to say, but like watching my friends go through difficult things of their own and kind of like unwind and lose it. Like I had one friend who went through a breakup, and it was one of those ones where she talked about it for a long time. Like we were all like, oh my God, when is this going to end? But I have to say, it kind of freed me up a lot to feel like the next time I just felt like I was falling because she was so vulnerable in front of me. I felt much more comfortable being vulnerable in front of her. But I also usually find when I'm in that space, the best thing for me is to get out of my head. So sometimes it is much better for me if I just go and see people and I don't say anything about it, because I'm also luckily highly distractible. So if somebody starts telling me what's going on with them, I can tune in and it just helps a lot. But I haven't I haven't necessarily, I have my people that I know I could call no matter what. And I think you and I had also discussed this, April, that when I had cancer, in so many ways, that was so much easier. That was so much easier because you don't even say anything and people are like, what do you need? You want me to drop you by food? You want me to do this? And it's like, there's no explanations, there's no nothing needed, and with this, it's I don't know if people, it's not even fair to say I don't know if people don't know what to do. It's like I don't even always know what to ask for, but I just find like the quiet and the calm is just best for me.
I think that's really interesting. It's something I'm going to come on to a few minutes because I feel like we're going to really rabbit on about it and I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. But I think when you said about cancer needs no explanation, right, I think that's because we've seen it time and time again represented on our screens. So people just know about it. And as far as to say that the charities are, their adverts are on our screens as well. And people, organizations and charities like Bipolar UK do not have the funds to be able to do something like that.
Right.
What did you just, oh yeah, I find that I agree with you. It's awful, but when one of my friends going through a difficult time, I'm like, this is my time to shine. I've got this. And finally, no one's fussing over me. I can't help. So I do feel that. And I always say, I've said it to Dylan, it's like when someone actually needs me, which is really lovely, it kicks off my borderline and I become attached as hell. But the point is, it's nice to feel needed as support, emotional support. So shimmying on to the question about representation on our screens, be that press, film, TV, entertainment, anything. I'm going to keep it vague to start off with, otherwise I'm going to rabbit on about Modern Love, and we don't want to do that just yet. Did you watch Modern Love, Dana?
I didn't watch it. Sorry. I passed out.
Fair enough. That's okay. Dylan, I made Dylan watch it. So what do you, in terms of, so let's start with Dylan. In terms of the trans community and mental health, do you feel like transgender has been represented well on screens, or have we still got a long way to go?
Well, I know that you've primed it for the audience to answer that question, but you know as well as I do, because April and I are making our own documentary on marriage transition, that being transgender was completely unrepresented for me as a child. I had no idea it was something that was plausible, possible, a potential, something that I could ever speak about. I just felt so alienated, even though I knew how to describe it in one sentence. Like I felt like I was a boy trapped inside the wrong body. And that's how I explained it to people when I was young. And even like my parents at the time, I have video recordings of me saying things like that. And everyone's just like, this kid's a bit strange. And then the conversation moves on. And it's just sort of, I just learned that okay, that you don't speak about it because no one else in the world has obviously ever heard this. And I am the only person. And it makes you feel incredibly small. And then watching the television, there was never anything that I remember until there were gay people on the screen. And I thought, oh, maybe this is category I could fit into because, you know, like if I could be in a same-sex relationship and maybe that would bring me a few of the things that I want in my life. And then slowly things started to trickle through. But then when I started to see my first experience of transgender being represented was in a film, and I think it's in 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, and it's basically like a piss take, and they're taking the mick out of a transgender character, and it seemed to be that there was always like a butt of the joke thing, and it wasn't until I lived in London and met a transgender person who was exactly like me until I really saw myself for the first time. And it's mad that you can go through life 25 years of life and never really see yourself until you're confronted with someone. And now, since then, I feel like it's everywhere. I'm seeing it on every platform all the time, and it's in such a zeitgeist social consciousness. And but whether that's like an echo chamber, I don't know. But it appears to be a very represented now. But it's very recently that's happened.
And specifically the documentary, pretending I have no part in it. What are you doing it for? Like, why did you decide to do one?
We decided to make the documentary, firstly, because I am going through something that I also had no research or representation for. So as a singer-songwriter, my voice has always been instrumental, excuse the pun, to my career and my life. And it's been the only thing really that has stayed with me since being a child until being in 28. Like your voice is how other people understand you. They hear you, you talk, you sing, you talk to yourself. It's sort of like a very big constant in my life. And it's had my career and how I've made money. And it's been one of those things that people started to understand me for. I had this crazy time at school where it could have gone one of two ways. Either I was going to be a very strange person that was incredibly bullied, or I learned how to play guitar and people fancy me because I'm kind of like a little rock star in school. And luckily my dad bought me a guitar and people just thought, you know, he's really weird, but he's kind of cool because of that. And I continued that. So the idea of transitioning and then losing the ability to sing, which has been my only rock, my only tether, let's say, I was really petrified. And there was nothing anywhere that would tell me whether taking testosterone would completely eradicate this one stable thing from my life. So eventually I came to the conclusion that living every day, being the person I need to be, has slightly more importance than this career that I've been chasing and this voice and the singing. So we were like, right, well, we have to document it just to know for ourselves how this pans out. And we can see and go back and sort of like watch how this unfolds. At the same time, parallel with that, it was, well, if I didn't have the representation that I needed as a child, maybe this can be some form of representation for someone else in another part of the world who is also 7 years old, questioning everything about themselves. So it was those two things, really.
I think that's what we have in common. We just always go back and think about your 7-year-old self and my 15-year-old self. That's kind of what drives everything. I mean, Dana, from your perspective, partly as a stand-up comic, I know we touched on Taylor Tomlinson yesterday.
Right.
Also, what media you were digesting at the time of your diagnosis? Because also you're in America, so
right.
yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing that I most remember is that show ER, and Sally Field played bipolar, but she was a doctor's mother, and like walked through a glass wall. Like it's always the most severe forms of it, I feel like, are shown. And so when we talk about how much it helps in being gay, having that represented for us, they're so clearly defined. And I feel like bipolar can actually look like many different things, even for one person throughout your life. So it is a little trickier in terms of how do you portray it. Like I can't say through stand up I've done a whole lot in terms of offering any service or educating. I've just and then just to touch on something else that was said, there is, with it becoming more acceptable in terms of the labels, the diagnosis of mental health issues, whether it's depression or ADD or bipolar. I also feel like this other thing has come up of like it being overdiagnosed, which is not me saying that. It's been said to me. And because I did have the experience of being on medication, coming off medication, there was that question of how valid or legitimate is my diagnosis. But as we spoke of, like, when they're diagnosing, what they're saying is you're showing a certain number of features of something, and it just changes through your life. Again, I don't know the question I was answering, but I just have my own little thing I take off on. But yeah, I guess I just went to representation is what I went to.
It's funny because Dylan, it just dawned on me then, Dylan, when you said you came face to face with a trans guy and you were like, oh my God, that's it. When I got the diagnosis, and it wasn't really even coming face to face, although since becoming part of the Bipolar UK family, when I got that diagnosis, I was like, I didn't know what bipolar was. All I knew was that my business partner mum lives with type 1. So that was my only knowledge of it. And then when they spoke it through, I was like, that is what it is. I've been waiting, took over 10 years to get a diagnosis, and that is it. And I just think, if only there was representation. I mean, my bisexuality, I didn't come out properly until I was about 24, 25. I got outed at 15 and then just ran back into the closet, partly because I thought bisexuality isn't a thing. It's a segue into lesbianism. So I had more sleepless nights wondering if I was gay or straight. In hindsight, was it sleepless nights because I was bipolar? Who knows? So I was never planning on, when I got this diagnosis, I kept it quiet for a year and just focused on my loved ones to try and understand and work on it. And then I got offered a chance to write something for a magazine, and I just went, excuse my French, is it French? I went balls deep in it. I thought, if this is what's happening, and like yourself, Dylan, I just thought, I don't want another generation to be able to Google and not be able to find anything, and not feel comforted, and not to see something that, although is my voice and what is my authentic self, I said it before you, Dylan, I still hope that the content I make and is relatable. So that is why I harp on so much. I just want to talk about modern love, my favorite thing. We've got about 5-10 minutes left. I don't know if anyone has watched it who's listening. Modern Love, Amazon Prime series. You don't have to watch it in order. Episode 3, Anne Hathaway plays a woman living with bipolar and working out, the dating side of living with an illness like that. And it's based on the New York Times best-selling author Terry Cheney. And when I don't feel well and I can't sleep, whether that's a low or a high, I just Google bipolar and bipolar stories and read articles, first person articles, to just feel comforted and maybe see something that I relate to. And I'm like, that's another piece of information I can use and feel comforted. And then I did it, and Anne Hathaway's face popped up. It got released the day before. It's like, right, I'm on this. I watched it, and that is the first true depiction of bipolar that I've ever seen. And all of a sudden, instead of one of my articles or me sending other links and statistics and everything like that, I had something that Joe blogs, love my family dearly, but some of them just don't know anything. And I finally had this piece of entertainment that they sit on the couch and just be like this. And all of a sudden, everyone went, oh, and my whole network changed around me. And I think this is why it's so important to have more people in the writers' room that live with an illness, more people who are queer to be in the writers' room. I think that's why we've never seen as many bisexual and trans stories continue, because they don't know how to continue them. Like bisexual stories, apart from appropriate behavior and maybe Alex from the OC, they usually just get tied in a knot of like, oh, it was a phase. Oh no, they're gay. So that's my
and it also teams in with what Dana said about it being like, if it's a bipolar character being represented, it is the extreme version of what that means. So you're only getting this representation of what that is, as opposed to someone who lives daily with the daily struggles of bipolar, but they're not being represented in the talk, in the TV show, because those things are seen as like the small things that aren't relevant, but they are incredibly relevant, if not more relevant, to a story, so that people can understand as something that's digestible and tangible to consume, so you can understand.
And there's three people that are like live and work in media. Dana, what have you got coming up? And are you your book? Tell us more about your book.
How to Be Depressed, a guide. I should have it right here, but I don't. But you could actually go to the website, howtobedepressed.com. It actually came out several years ago. It has some wonderful illustrations, and it's actually completely all it's jokes without making light of it. It's like it kind of actually, someone who was a psychologist had read it, and they said, there's a lot of stuff I recognize in here from the DSM, and that, I just turn them into jokes, but it's, finding your depressed wardrobe. It's ways to know if you're ways to know if you're depressed, sorry, I should have it right in front of me, but
Good.
So but it just sort of, without turning the seriousness of it away, it just makes jokes of like those lowest moments and where your brain tends to go. So
I'm gonna have to look that up. I love a mental health
book.
Sounds great.
Oh, and it also has a thing of how to be depressed in like different cities and countries, like in France, tell people you're not depressed, you are les miserables,
Brilliant. I just want to, I'm going to quickly, we've got about 5 minutes left. And Dylan, I want us to touch on Dancing in Flames, but what happened is I've written 3 films. First one was bisexual, second one was bipolar, and the third one was a combination of the two and the repercussions of when someone takes their own life. So it's a trilogy of April Kelley that no one asked for, but have got its complete heft. And Just in Case and Do This For Me are in collaboration with Bipolar UK, but I just want to touch on Just in Case more so, and it centers around this notion of a just in case suicide letter, and also a conversation between me and my dad. If anyone is interested in this, I'm not going to rabbit on because I'm getting told we've got 5 minutes. If you are interested, find me on Instagram. I'm more than happy to send a private link. It's currently on the festival circuit. but also Dylan wrote the credits track for it, and he summed up my brain in 3 minutes better than I did in a 14-minute film. And I just wanted you to say a few words on it, Dylan.
Oh, on the song?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my job has been to sort of like to whittle down emotions, like to whittle down a story, like a 14-minute story, into something, a digestible 3-minute song. And words have become like a close part of how I deal with everyday life. And that's something that is one of my techniques to use for my own mental health. I journal about things, and I become sort of metaphorical and poetic about things. And I just saw it was that metaphor, to be honest, April. It was like, I saw your world as being so beautiful, and the way that you held yourself amidst all the struggle that you go through, it was always like you were dancing, and it was just so beautiful to watch. But I could see that it was also painful, which is why there was dancing in flames. And flames and fire happens to be an incredibly powerful and beautiful thing, as well as can cause pain. So it seemed like the great analogy for it. And then the first verse talks about how you don't hate to swim. Swimming isn't the problem. It's when you feel like you're drowning. That's the problem. And you don't hate flying. You don't hate the feeling of flying. You hate when you're falling. So it's not the being here. It's not being on earth. It's not being it every day. It's when those problems creep in that is the problem. Is those things, not just being around. And I don't know. I tried to make sense of what I could of how you were feeling, and it happened to resonate, which I felt quite fortunate about.
It's stunning. So if you want to see the film, come find me on Instagram. If you want to hear the song, go find Dylan, Son of the Sea Jams. So all our little handles are popping up now. Before we conclude this, just want to remind you guys of the poll. You'll see the strip, the banner. There you go. Wow.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell which one's winning, but there you go. And I just want to say, I had this little epiphany a while ago, and I was doing a Twitter space and about eradicating stigma. And I don't know, Dana, if you've spoken a lot about this as well, but it's always the question I get, and I just never can answer it. And I always say education, for sure. And then I realized where I struggled throughout this journey. And in order to begin to eradicate stigma, from my opinion, is we have to eradicate the stigma within ourselves and the language we use about ourselves and the language we think about ourselves, because then 9 times out of 10 it comes out in a negative or oh my god, what's the word? Deprecating. Yeah, thank you. I was going to decapitated nearly came out then. That's really as an image.
Same.
Eradicating the stigma and using kinder language, which then we vocalize, and then people around will not have the opportunity to raise stigma because we're finally articulating it in a way. Right, what have we got? 2 minutes. We're done, actually, aren't we? You said 5. Okay. Any closing 1-sentence statements to change the world and the bipolar community? Go.
I mean, I don't have a one statement that can do all of that, but the one thing I would say, based on what you just said, is being kinder to yourself. I think that's one of the main things that I always try and do with you, April, is because I feel like when anyone's in a spiral situation, the worst thing is then making yourself out to be the villain of your own story. Like, well, I'm so this and I'm so that, and I'm making it worse for everyone else. And one of the things I hate the most when you say is that you're difficult, because you're not difficult. Like you're just not at all. And those sort of thoughts make you feel worse. And that's something I'd never want for you.
Bless you. Love you. Dana, any final thoughts?
I think everybody needs a Dylan.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm available for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
I mean, I think it's just find, your superpower, for me, and all of my friends, like whenever anything bad happens, I'm like, what's our superpower? It's writing a joke, see what you can get from it, whether it's a story or a joke or a song or something else. Try to get a payoff.
Yeah. Nice.
And on that note, thank you everyone who has joined us today. It's unusual not to see other people's faces and comments, but it's been an absolute joy. Thank you to Dana and Dylan. Thank you to our supporters and volunteers at Bipolar UK. I always say this illness is crippling. It can be embarrassing, and it sure as hell is a struggle to get out of bed every morning. But even if you're watching this in bed, brilliant. You're still potentially sitting upright. Always remember there's a spark of genius in you. And like Dana said, it is a superpower. And I love you all.
Yeah, amazing.